I've been teaching and living in Southeast Asia for most of the past 8 years. I thought that some people might be interested in the experiences that I've had in healthcare and with illness. One thing that I would point out right away is that medications are much less expensive here than in the United States, where I'm from. But it's also very important to know what medications you're receiving and look up online if you're not familiar with certain medications to find out what the indications are and what it's usually prescribed for and what the side effects might be. Also, any interactions it might have with other medications. It's also important to keep in mind that you can look for alternatives to Western medicine. I've found Chinese herbalists to be very helpful when I've had problems with my health, and traditional healers to be sometimes the most effective in dealing with what I had to deal with. Before leaving for Southeast Asia 8 years ago, I looked up on the U.S. State Department website to find out what immunizations were recommended, and I did what was within my budget. When I was first making arrangements to come to Southeast Asia, I was scheduled to be teaching and getting my certification as a TESOL professional in a Buddhist monastery in a large city called Chiang Mai in Thailand. About a week before I left, they called me and let me know that that program had shut down and I would be serving in a small Aka village near the border with Burma. That's a lot different environment also. Within the first 2 months, I was in a rural hospital in northern Thailand. When I first arrived, there were so many mosquitoes at this place, and I was in a room and requested that I get a mosquito net for the doorway of my room. The president, vice president of this organization said that that wouldn't be happening because it might not look right. So within the first 2 months of being there, I had dengue fever and was in a rural hospital. There was one doctor who spoke English there that I would see maybe once a day in my 7-day stay. None of the other staff that I know of spoke English, although there were visitors and some patients that did speak English. The first issue that I had to deal with was that in Southeast Asian cultures, it's usually expected that a person will have somebody to care for them while they're in the hospital. The person usually has someone to stay with them 24 hours a day and is there to meet their needs. I didn't have anyone, and I was pretty much dropped off by the people at this NGO, and they did bring a pillow 3 days into my stay, and that was helpful, but that was it. And so I needed somebody to help care for me. There was a woman, a Thai woman, who overheard the conversation that the staff was having, that there was a foreigner there with no one to care for them. So she was there, Bua was there caring for her father in the bed that was right behind mine in this very large ward. She cared for me every day of my stay, and I'm very grateful to her. When I recovered and my counts started going back up and I didn't have breakbone fever anymore, she rode me on her motorbike to take me back to the Aka village to get my belongings and help me get to a resort where I paid $10 a night and taught English after I recovered a little bit more, taught English in exchange for lunch. The people were wonderful at Punya Mantra Resort in northern Thailand. So during the stay, there was a monk who was helping me with how to protect myself. He wanted to teach me how to protect myself. So he was teaching me moves and talking with me in English. He was one of the patients there. And there was a little girl who was so excited to see a foreigner that she could practice her English with. So even though I couldn't turn over to get water from the table next to my bed, I was smiling and talking with this little girl who very much wanted me to teach at her school when I recovered. Another issue that I had when I moved to Chiang Mai after the stay and after getting my TESOL certification in the north of Thailand, I was eating some crispy pork and broke a tooth in the back of my mouth. I was very lucky to get an appointment the same day at a dental clinic near the university. My dentist was an instructor at the university and she did a great job despite her frustration with my involuntary gag reflex and when she was working with these instruments in the back of my throat. But we got it done and she rebuilt the tooth that I thought would have to be pulled. After that, while working at a university in another area of Thailand, I was bum rushed by a Great Dane-sized dog and taken to the hospital to start receiving a series of rabies shots. And the hospital was wonderful. It was not a good experience, but going to the hospital was. There was a woman who served like a concierge. So when I presented my card at the reception desk at the hospital, she was immediately called, came and explained everything that was going on in English, helped guide me around the hospital to where I needed to go, and came to make sure that I was satisfied with the visit before I left. She was like a friend. So when I'd see her at festivals outside of the hospital, it was like seeing a good friend. I moved to Cambodia in 2015, and one of the main problems I had in working in this school where the food was prepared by the villagers, and I had difficulty with diarrhea. I had experience with diarrhea maybe once every week. So one thing I discovered was that I had to be careful with water and ice, and chipped ice is not a good idea for me and might not be for you. And I looked for manufactured ice that had a hole through the center of it. And if the drink smelled like fish scales, by the time I got to the bottom of it, I knew I might be in trouble, and I realized it was the chipped ice. So that's one thing that I do to protect my health now and don't have the frequency of the problems that I used to have. One of the issues that came up early in my stay in Cambodia is that there was a big HIV outbreak in a village in a province adjacent to where I was staying. As I remember it, there were more than 200 people that were infected with HIV through the reuse of needles by one of the doctors there. And so the care that is given is often not with the hygienic conditions that are practiced in other countries. Of course, most doctors don't share their needles, but it was something that did happen in a province near where I was staying. There are no chiropractors that I could find for an athletic accident I've had, and I tried osteopaths. I needed to travel the cost was $120 for the car to go to Phnom Penh, to an osteopath that I saw online that seemed to have techniques similar to the ones that I needed. So it was $120 for the car and $65 for the visit. And the massage, the woman who offered the massage was sick at the time and also didn't seem to have any skills in giving massage. The care was not what I was looking for. So no chiropractors that I could find in Siem Reap or in Cambodia, even in the capital city. Another issue that I dealt with here in Cambodia is Chikungunya Virus. So it's similar to breakbone virus, to Dengue Fever, but it was diagnosed differently by the doctor, and the doctor came to the room of the hotel where I was staying. Very much appreciated his care. It was not easy for me to roll over in the bed during this episode with Chikungunya virus. It's severe. I hope I don't have it again, and wanted to let you know what some experiences are that can happen when you serve in a different country. Even when we're in our own country, of course, we have all kinds of issues that can happen. I've been a recipient, I guess, of Medicare since I turned 65. But what that means is I pay the premium of $170 starting next year, $170 a month, but I don't get the medical care because I'm not in the United States and it can't be used in other countries. So that's something to keep in mind if you're from the United States. The Medicare coverage doesn't work in other countries. COVID happened about 2 years ago now, more than 20 months that the airport has been closed, and I haven't been able to return to Laos from Cambodia since I came to Siem Reap to go to the airport. COVID has been an issue, and I wanted to get the vaccine. So my experience with getting the vaccine was I was told by a doctor I needed to go to the regional hospital in Siem Reap. I went there and there were many people milling around early in the morning. No one seemed to know quite what was going on, but I saw who the organizer of the event was, an older woman, and her staff. I found out that you had to have your name on the list to get the vaccine when they opened up the service. So I approached the organizer for the event when she wasn't busy. No one was speaking. They seemed to be at a lull, waiting for everything to open up. And I started with "excuse me," and she waved me away. No one would give me information on how I could get on a list or where I could go for a vaccine. I had a connection with a hospital administrator in another province. The administrator said that I needed to get a letter from a government official and then bring that to his hospital, and he would make sure that I got the vaccine. I got help for getting the letter to government official's office. They said that was on a Friday. They said it would be Monday before I would get a response. And it's been months and I still haven't received a response. The next thing I did was I went to Phnom Penh. So I negotiated a $200 car ride down to $100 and made the ride to Phnom Penh. And they were completely organized, and there was lots of space between people. They were very efficient. I had to sit in lots of pools of alcohol and chairs because they were spraying everything, trying to keep things safe for everyone that was participating. And they gave us our card immediately. Then I went back 2 weeks later for my second vaccine. I'm waiting for the possibility of a booster. I went to Laos, 4 years ago for the first time. So that was 4 years after my first experience with dengue fever. I had my second experience with dengue fever in Luang Prabang, Laos. It was about 2 weeks into my visit that everything seemed to go black and white. I don't know how else to explain it. Colors were not as vivid, was how I was experiencing dengue fever this time. And I was extremely weak. Weak to walk up steps to my hotel room and inside the room. One of my students took me to the hospital and they immediately checked me for dengue fever, and that's what was happening. So if I felt worse, I could go back to the hospital and they could monitor me there, but I stayed at the hotel and was able to recover on my own. Breakbone fever is not a good thing. So I heard that there are 4 different variations of dengue fever, and if you have dengue fever, that you're immune for 4 years. So I got it exactly 4 years later, my second bout of dengue fever. The tooth that I got fixed in Thailand came apart a few years later, and while I was in Luang Prabang, Laos, and I found an excellent dentist there. She was beyond wonderful. I thought they would just need to pull what was left, and she said no, she could reconstruct it. I think it's better than my real tooth. So she deep cleaned all my teeth, and I was very appreciative of her care. They didn't have the x-ray machines and things like that, but her examination was completely thorough. I was completely happy with what it was, and I left with less than a $40 bill, I think. For medical health care, Pakan Medical Clinic in Luang Prabang is excellent. And they have all the latest technology for assessing what's going on health-wise. The doctor speaks in English, explains everything thoroughly, showed me on the computer exactly what was going on with my health after the examinations that they had done and the testing that they had done. It was very fast, efficient, and I was completely satisfied. And the cost is very much smaller than the costs that are incurred in the United States, where I'm from. So those are some of my experiences in healthcare and illness. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put those in the comments below, and I'll be glad to help in any way that I can. And thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos. Bye-bye.